Okay, we are on 26b4, and we have just learned about the concept of tearing, where you could not carry on the tear because carrying on the tear would indicate that there's a continuation of it, and over here there's no possibility to be able to mix the various kinds of tearing. So the Gemara asked the question, and you saw that there seemingly that would be okay, and the answer was that it's different when the tearing is actually for mourning, and when the tearing is out of kavod, but not necessarily out of the laws of mourning, and that would impact on the conversation that we had. So 26b4, and we are right on. We at the top. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Hayotzev beged karua. Let's say you have a person who he goes out and he's wearing a beged karua, so the clothing is ripped. Lifnei hamet. Hareze gozel et hametim ve'et ha'hayim. He's stealing, okay, from the living and the dead. What does that mean? Stealing from the living and the dead, just because he went out with a beged karua? All right. So to understand this, we're going to go straight into the Rashi. The Rashi says beged karua. It's about 6 lines from the bottom in the Rashi. You see it? Beged karua kodem lachen. He goes out with a beged karua before has come the time to be able to tear. Lachen gozel kodem lachen. So before gozel hakol shemirameh hakol shemareh lahen shekara lamet. So he's stealing from the dead because he didn't tear for them. And he's stealing from the living because they think that he tore for it. So he winds up stealing on a dual level. The people that are the mourners. So let's take a look at the Rashi on the bottom. Okay, Rashi on the bottom gives us one extra piece in the Rashi Ktav Yad. Can you see it? It's about 10 lines from the bottom in the tiny can't see it print. Gozel et ha'chaim, he steals from the living. Okay. Shegonev da'atam. Now there's an interesting halacha that a person we know is not allowed to steal money, not allowed to steal things. But there's also an idea of stealing someone's mind.
Genevat da'at.
Genevat da'at, excellent. What is genevat da'at? Genevat da'at doesn't mean that you steal somebody's mind by selling them on being a democratic socialist. Rather, stealing someone's mind means that they thought something that wasn't actually true. So, an example of Gnevat Da'at means a classic. You have a store, someone walks in, they're trying on, let's say you sell glasses, they're trying on glasses for an hour, and then when you turn around, they snap a picture of the model number and they go and buy it on Amazon. So they thought you were coming in to buy a product. They gave you a service. Meanwhile, you had never had any intention of doing so. That's called Gnevat Da'at. There are many examples of Gnevat Da'at.
Like picking their brain?
It's like stealing their brain, which means they thought something and you didn't disabuse them of that notion.
Right.
I have a cake. It's an extra cake because the bakery gave me 2. I see you walking down the road. I'm like, oh, this is great. Fantastic timing. Jack, look what I got you for your birthday. You're so happy that I would have thought of you on your birthday. I went and bought you this cake, right? That's Gnevat Da'at, because I did not buy you the cake. I happened to have the cake as an extra. Mm-hmm. I didn't buy it special for you. Now, in that case, there's an additional element to the Gnevat Da'at. Why? Because it's highly likely, say HaChachamim, that you're going to feel it, that it is incumbent upon you on my birthday to go out of your way. After all, the guy went and bought me a cake on my birthday. So there might actually be a physical price for the fact that I did not correct you on that Gnevat Da'at. So you'd be obligated to tell him, I have this extra cake. I'd like to give it to you for your birthday. Or I had this extra cake, then saw you walking down the street and thought, wow, min hashamayim, Hashem gave me a gift to be but not that I went out of my way, which would then, in your own mind, obligate you to go out of your way. They think, wow, what a friend this guy is. We have avelut, and look, he tore for our avelut. They feel indebted to you.
Well,
that
the person
debt
has nothing to do with the men,
nothing to
with the
do.
mourning. He's just a friend of the.
A friend of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Why is he stealing from the metim? Because it seems like he's pretending as if he's actually done kiryah, but actually the kiryah was not for the met.
But why can't it be additional honor? It's like instead of stealing, meaning one more paying respect to the dead.
So if you tore, you paid respect. If you wore the shirt but pretended like you tore,
Misrepresented.
it's misrepresenting, and it's therefore you're stealing from the metim as well. Now it's actually interesting because it's not quite clear. It's not quite clear. How did you trick a dead guy? On the gneva dat, fine. But what is the tricking? What is the stealing from the metim? So an interesting answer to this, a simple answer to this. Come on, guys.
The family.
Work it out. What do you mean?
He's tricking the family who's mourning the dead.
That's the living people.
Right.
How is it? We said he's stealing from the living and the dead. And the dead. How do you steal from the dead guy?
But he's still there listening to everything that happened. Isn't that was one of the things that you...
His neshama is still there?
Maybe, but why is, you mean, and he tricked the neshama. I kind of feel like if he's a neshama, he already knows what's going on. Sugya that we actually came across, if you remember.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Yes.
Do the dead know what's going on with the living? Right? Gemara Mefureshet. Okay? So, you know what the answer could be? Simple answer.
Too simple.
It's just like a vote of the net.
Reputation.
What if the case is where he has a chiyuv?
Someone else passed away and he came up the second one.
We talked about people that you have a chiyuv to rip for.
A teacher.
So family, of course, but also
A rabbi.
So
A
if he's
community.
either family, or if he's a student, and this is his rabbi,
Mhm.
or if he's someone in the Av Bedin or whatever, all of those cases he would be required to rip for the dead guy.
So you would have to wait.
So what did he do? He wore a shirt that's already ripped out,
Right.
as if it, and he's stealing the obligation that he would have had
Of parents.
to the dead guy. But that would only be relevant if it was one of the chiyuvim. So we can say
Yeah, so the reputation of the maid also has been imperiled. He's
in what way?
given the same kavod that you would have expected. Oh, this maid must not have been such an important person if this person isn't willing to recreate for him.
Well, Memanavshah, because if he fooled everybody, then they don't know. Then he's not a Gonevet HaChaim.
But he walked up with already ripped.
Yes,
And
he
they
walked
see
in.
that he
He walked in.
isn't.
Oh, if they saw that he
He's
wasn't.
not taking a fresh shirt.
No, but that's
and
my
putting
point.
it up.
My point is, you would never have a scenario, if that's the answer, of Gozel Tachayim ve'atet hamitim. You could have either or, but not both. Because if they saw him coming ripped, then he would not be Gonevet HaChaim. Because he was not Gnevat Dat, that he tore with them and they owe him.
So it must be the same action that he's doing. for
Exactly.
both, you know.
If it's both, then it would have to be that he had a chiyuv. Again, that's my. I didn't look at all the notes. I didn't look at all the mifarshim, but just from learning the Gemara, that would be an example of this. And by the way, we had a perfect example just in the last class, also of this, where the Gemara could have answered something, but we found a way to. We thought it was all according to Yehuda ben Betera, but the Gemara was trying to figure out a way to make it shayach for everyone. Okay, perfect. But the rabbi is absolutely correct. You could find two separate cases of Gozel Tachayim or Tamitim, just not at the same time. My dear friend Rabbi Daniel Rowe used to say, everyone says you can't have your cake and eat it too. He said, yes, you can, just not in that order. You can, and then eat it too, but you can't have your cake and eat it too at the same time. Okay, says the Mishnah. So that's the first opinion. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, if someone says to his friend, lend me, I want to borrow your coat, and I'm going to go see my father who's sick. Now, poor guy, he gets there, and his father's not sick. His father's passed away. He rips it, and he fixes it. What was the halakha always we said?
Can't mend for the father.
Excellent. And until when?
Until after the.
No. On Aviv Imo, ever. You're allowed to base it. Strict question. I was setting you up. But that's the whole chidush, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Since you borrowed it, that's his chidush. Korea, because you have a chiyuv to be Korea, and then you mend it. When he gets back home, he returns his cloak to the chaver, and he pays him for the amount of money of the tear. Now, 1 second. What do you mean he pays him for the amount? He just said he mended it.
Because it was a clean jacket. It didn't have a tear in it.
So how would you figure this out?
Why would he mend
It's like
it?
Baba Kama style right now. How much would a guy pay for the difference of having a cloak that was never mended versus a cloak that was fixed and mended?
Well, why mend it if he's going to pay him for the coat?
Because this is his coat. I have to give it back to him. I have a chiyuv to return back to him
Got it.
what I borrowed from him. Now, by the way, that lends itself to a whole other question. Can the friend tell him, again, it sounds like a Baba Kama-esque question. Can the guy tell him, just like we find if something breaks, there's a whole question of Baba Kama, if the broken pieces are to the Ba'alim or not to the Ba'alim. Remember that?
He paid for it.
Right. So normally we say, I'll pay you and you take the broken piece and I'll make it up to you. How about the guy says, no, you take the broken piece. I want a new one. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel does not sound like you have that option. He's just telling you this is the law. You rip the coat, you give him back the coat, mended, and you pay the difference. But sorry?
Difference, not for a new coat.
What do you mean?
Am I paying you for the new coat, or am I paying you for the difference of what it?
I'm just saying, so far in what we just learned, the way I like to learn the Gemara is as it unfolds. I don't want to tell you what we're going to learn later at this point, because that's not the flow of the Gemara. The flow of the Gemara is at each point. So at this point, sorry? Yes, the depreciation. Now, we have not heard, or we've not discussed, what if the guy doesn't want to rip the coat at all with the money? Let me ask you that. What would you want? Someone borrows your suit, rips your suit. I don't want a ripped suit with $5. I want a new unripped suit.
Separate question.
Okay. But if he didn't tell him that he's going to visit his sick father, then you're not allowed to touch the coat. Why? We assume that when he says, I need to borrow your chaluk to go visit my sick father, the fellow understands that there is a possibility that it might get ripped. But it might get ripped. Since at that point he lends him the coat, it's as if he's telling him,
Kissing goodbye.
and no, not kissing goodbye, because you'll have to pay back, you have to fix it for me, but at the very least that I'm allowing you to go and rip it. But if he said to him, oh, I'm going to Great Adventures, right, with your coat, no problem. He has no hava amina that there's going to be a situation of kiryah. So then lo yigabo, you have no permission to tear the coat, it's not yours. By the way, remember we talked about this? We just mentioned the sugya of tearing, not over a relative, and not over a chacham, and not over a av bedin or a nasi. We talked about the idea of tearing over Yerushalayim. And I told you, people asked me, how come you don't do this? I said, how come people don't know halakha? Halakha is you have to rip. What do many people do?
2 shirts.
So sorry?
They bring 2 shirts, no?
The people that are very makbir on halakha bring 2 shirts. People who are makbir on halakha and on social niceties bring 2 shirts. Not
You
everyone
can
is
also go on Rosh Chodesh and then you're covered for 30 days.
excellent. You go Rosh Chodesh, you can go Erev Shabbat. On Shabbat also no problem.
You can't tear on Rosh Chodesh?
No, or on Shabbat. Okay? However, hold on. Let's say you don't go on those days. What do people do? The person they're going with, they tell them, I'm makneh to you
Swap shirts.
all my clothing.
Party shirts.
Other guy, all of your clothing to me. Now I own your clothing, you own my clothing.
So
Are
it's
you?
not yours.
They're
and
my
it's not-
clothing.
They're my clothing.
Can't tear.
Exactly this halakha of lo yigabo.
Don't
Why?
you need 3? Don't you need 3? If you have 2 and I gave you mine, you gave me mine, you got yours back.
No. Not we swapped clothing. Swapped clothing, I would have to tear my new clothes, which are your old clothes. The point here is you own mine and I'm wearing yours. You're wearing mine currently. My suit belongs to me, right? It's just, sorry, my suit belongs to you. I'm just wearing your suit. I have no right to tear your suit. The whole logic over here is, now, by the way, if you were a wise guy, you would exchange clothing, and then right as you got to the kotel, you say, I give you full permission to tear my suit.
Uh,
At that point,
uh,
the guy will be obligated to tear his own suit. Right? And his halachic loophole would have gotten nothing but misery. Okay? So the lo yigabo over here is assuming that the person is not willing to do so. Now, I just want to point out one thing. And I want to share an interesting halakha, and that will come back into this concept, and maybe will help us understand the Baba Kama-esque element over here. Okay? And that's as follows. There was once a question that was asked to Rebbe Yashiv. What happens? It's a raining Friday night. Guy walks to the coat room. He sees that there's one raincoat in the coat room. He knows he brought a raincoat. The raincoat that's hanging there is not his.
Not his.
What does that mean?
Somebody took his.
Someone else took his. Now, I'm stuck here. Someone else has my raincoat.
He's taking the other.
And it's pouring rain. Would you ordinarily assume, let's say it's just raining and you didn't bring a raincoat. You just found the raincoat. Would you assume that you're allowed to take someone's raincoat into the rain without permission?
No.
No. But what if now he's taking your raincoat?
Isn't it an ansari that you assume that he wants you to take his raincoat because he by mistake took yours?
So Rev Yashiv is the source of that Anan Sadi.
What is an answer?
There's no Gemara that says that. Rev Yashiv says that Anan Sadi means we are witnesses. It doesn't mean that you're actually witnessing or testifying anything. It's just a concept that we use, introduce, and we say, Anan Sadi, we're witnesses that this truism is true. Okay? Says Rev Yashiv, anybody who is walking home in this raincoat, gets to his house, takes off his raincoat, soaking wet, realizes he's taking someone else's raincoat, realizes that there's some poor Jew in shul who now does not have his raincoat because I took it home. Is there anyone that would say, I don't allow him to wear my raincoat in the rain?
No.
What would everybody say? I hope he took mine. That's an Anan Sadi. Okay, Anan Sadi means we are witnesses that this is the reality. Okay? So, not only that, says Rav Yashiv, forget the rain. This is the Chidush of Rav Yashiv. Someone took your raincoat. Doesn't bring it back. You're allowed to take and keep his raincoat.
How do you know it's his?
Same Anan Sadi. Because what's the likelihood?
Okay, fine. So you're allowed to take the coat that's in the closet.
Yeah, we don't assume that Jews are stealing things.
Got it.
So some guy came, I'm missing a raincoat, someone else's raincoat is here, honest mistake, and keep it. Anan Sadi, why? He's got your raincoat, you got his raincoat, who cares? And I always said to myself, this is one of the proofs that El Yashiv has no clue.
Where are you going with that?
Dot. For Rav Elyashiv, a raincoat is a raincoat is a raincoat. Don't you imagine some self-righteous Jewish guy screaming, I took a Kirkland special raincoat from Costco, and this guy has my Prada raincoat? I'm not Michaelim in Shamayim. I'm going to rain fire down on him from Gehinnom, right? In his mind, you see the purity of Rav Elyashiv, that the assumption is obviously a raincoat is only for the purpose of repelling rain. Even the umbrella. I have the super fancy non-wind one that you get only on Sharper Image on the plane for $9,000. Yours was $20 on the corner. In his world, and I'm sure he could not fathom that there was somebody out there that would spend a huge amount of money in order to have somebody in China sew on, a label that had these letters instead of those letters. God bless him. Now, if we told Rav Elyashiv that his Anan Sadi was based on the fact that he lived in Bate Ungarin, and over there, a raincoat is a raincoat is a raincoat, but over here, not all raincoats were made equal, then I'm sure he would say that there is zero Anan Sadi. Maybe in the case of wearing the raincoat home that night in the rain, even Mr. Prada, God bless him, would allow for such a thing after stealing your Kirkland special. But for ownership, never. Clear? Let's go back to this Gemara. Someone lent you the coat. You go to rip it. You go to that thing. You rip the coat. You sew it up. You give the difference in the money. Who wants a ripped jacket? Okay, let's just remember, they were Batei Ungaran Jews.
What is that translation?
Batei Ungaran is an area of the houses of Hungary. They were it's like a tiny hodgepodge of house on top of house on top of house, right next to Mea Sha'arim, where everyone lives in the most beautiful simplicity and purity in the world.
Got it.
Non-materialistic.
Like the least, anything you own is brought into your house in a black plastic bag that looks exactly identical to the black plastic bag that you brought milk or bread home in. If you have a suit, it comes home to your house in a black plastic bag. If you bought a brand new piece of jewelry in the fanciest store in Batei Ungaran, you come home with jewelry from your wife in a black, nondescript plastic bag. Okay? They lived, it's a whole different world. A place maybe that is one of the last bastions of purity on earth today. Okay? Now, I don't mean them specifically. I mean that concept. Exactly. So for them, right? What happens when you ripped in the front? You turned around your beged to the back, and you wore the back of your beged in the front, like we talked about yesterday. And what happens if it was ripped on the bottom? No problem. Wear your shirt upside down and then rip it from the top. No problem. You're good. Who's wearing upside down, backwards, inside out shirts? The answer is it wasn't a shirt. It was a piece of material. It was a shawl. So you rotated it this way, you rotated it that way, you rotated it upside down. These were not people that after you came back from your dead father, Barminan, and you had to tear his beged, that he's telling you, you keep it. Buy me a new one. So long as you made it good and you were mitacheh and you paid him the difference of a depreciated beged, whatever. And just it harkens back to something maybe a little bit beautiful that kind of you see playing through, coming through in the language of the Gemara. Okay, let's continue. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Braita says, Tanu Rabbanan. Choleh shemet lo met. Let's say you have a person, an ill person, and he had someone who passed away for him. En modi'in oto shemet. I had that just this past month. Unfortunately, I had to go to the house of someone who passed away, a young man who passed away. I'm sitting with the family in the hallway, and they're screaming and they're crying. And they say, how will we tell grandma? I said, who's telling grandma? She's 95 years old. It's going to kill her. Her heart's going to stop. I said, who's telling grandma? Nobody tells grandma. Grandma does not need to know. Where's the little source of that come from?
Here. Wow.
Here. 1 second. Grandma doesn't have chiyuv avelut.
Right.
Doesn't say grandma choleh. What if the person who's choleh has chiyuv avelut? At least some of the laws of avelut, we said are deoraita. How could you not tell them? They have to do kiryah.
Because it's sakana to that person.
Excellent. Guys, if you tell them, in modino toshemet, shema titrov da'ato alav. Maybe the person will lose his mind. They'll have a nervous breakdown. Further, we don't tear in front of him. So, in other words, you might have thought, okay, maybe you don't tell him the harsh news. Maybe you do the chiyuv of kiryah in front of them. Not even that. And even the women that are crying, you silence them, the women who are mourning, who should be crying. In front of them, nothing. By the way, to this family's credit, what they say, it's not going to help to hide it from grandma. This young man was such a tzaddik. He spoke with his grandma, I think they said every day, maybe 3 times a week.
So she would have known, right?
How long are they getting away with this charade? So I said, maybe it's worth at least waiting until after the Shiva. Why? Because at that point, grandma finds out, but the family is not in Shiva. She doesn't feel the need to come to the burial, go to the funeral, go bar minan to the cemetery, which any of those could kill her, right? So you're learning over here. The Gemara is telling you again. It's such a profound nod to the humanity of mitzvot that, like as we said many times, the pasuk says, "V'chai bahem v'lo shi'amut bahem." The Torah's mitzvot were given that a person should live through them, not that they should die through them. There's 3 mitzvot that we learn that have a person's obligated to do, even if they cause risk to his life, even if they cause him to lose his life. And what are they?
Not one of these.
Not this one, but what are they?
Shivach damim,
Relations.
Murder and adultery. Idolatry, adultery, and murder. Okay? Gilui arayot, shfichut damim, right? And avodah zarah. Those are the 3. Okay? I want to tell you also the
public desecration of Hashem's name during Shad Hashmad.
sorry?
The public desecration of Hashem's name in Shad Hashmad.
So that's not entirely correct, although that is very, very good, what you're saying. It's a Gemara in my Sechet Sanhedrin. The Gemara says that during Shat Hashmad, anything is your person has to give their life for. Shat Hashmad means, let's say we're living in a time like during the Inquisition, where they're hunting Jews for Judaism, so to speak. At that point, any mitzvah, or during the time of the Romans, any mitzvah whatsoever is one of the Gimel Averot Chamurot. And the Gemara even gives an example. Nathan, what's the Gemara's example? You remember?
Shoelaces.
Excellent. We have a double answer over there. Afilu arkita de misana. Even the shoelaces on the shoe. The Jews used to wear a different color shoelaces than the non-Jews. Okay, that was an identifying feature, shoelaces. So to switch your shoelaces was even that was Yahareg Val Ya'avor. You had to die rather than give up. What's the reason? Shat Hashmad, the likelihood of throwing out the baby with the bathwater is exceedingly high. So we had to basically have a goal line stand, the red zone stand, for everything and anything. Incidentally, these laws are complex, and no one should be drawing any halachic basis for this without speaking to a posek, because there's a big disagreement over whether or not that example was only for the person it was said about. Is it only for a Talmid Chacham? What is public? Or does public mean in front of 10 people? Does it mean in front of 10 Jews? So there's many, many, many different layers to this. And of course, for halacha, we'd have to kind of go through it with a more fine-tooth comb. Either way, so the halacha is in a scenario of cholesh shemet lomet, they don't tell, they don't tear in front, and as well, mishatkin tanashim. Now, just let's kind of go through this one more time. What is this mishatkin tanashim? Shut up the women.
They cry more. Didn't we learn in the beginning? They were more sensitive.
Yeah, so obviously we don't have to. That's one of those things that I don't feel like you need to learn, right? That's we hold these truths to be self-evident. You don't have to go and figure that out. From the Gemara, it's women are obviously, more. They feel more deeply emotionally. So of course, that you're going to find that as well. However, I think that there's another element here too. I want to see if anyone remembers. I don't know if anyone remembers. We talked about the idea that there were women that were specifically hired to cry.
Ululate.
Sorry?
The ones who would ululate.
Yes, exactly. So they would sit on the side and they would moan and they would groan and they would scream and they would say, "Oh!" Literally, that was a job that people were hired and paid to do. Okay? And what would that do? The point of that would be to arouse the people there to a higher level of mourning, so that people would feel the pain, and it would feel for the family, it would feel for the niftar, and everyone was sad. By the way, if you doubt this, go to next time you're at a funeral, pay attention. All of a sudden you hear one of the women start crying, wail,
right.
Everybody loses it. Right. In fact, in Echa, the pasuk says, "Bacho tifke balayla." Dimata alechia. Bacho tifke balayla means cry you shall surely cry in the night. And the Mefarshim over there say, what's the idea of Bacho tifke balayla, cry you shall surely cry in the night? The idea is that in the nighttime, the voice carries further, and Bacho tifke means that when you cry, not only cry, you shall surely cry, i.e., double cry, cry more, but that your cry is generative, causative, causes other. So if you cry at night and the voice of the crying is heard, you will generate more crying for the destruction of Yerushalayim. Says the Braita, Umikar'in lekatan mipnei agmat nefesh. Now, does a katan, are they chayav in mitzvot? No. So, does a katan have an obligation to tear? Yes or no? No. So why are we tearing for a katan? Mikar'in lekatan mipnei agmat nefesh. Because of grief. Now, this is a very interesting expression. Because of grief. So come take a look over here.
Wasn't this like the kavod of the parent?
The grief of the parent.
Or the vice versa, right?
Yes, the grief of the parent. So we talked about the idea of causing that grief. Hold on one second here. Mikarin lakatan, you see it? It's about 8 lines from the bottom. Last word on the line. So let's go back actually 1 line above that. Ve'en mikarin lacholeh et begadav. Mishatkin et anashim lefanav. What does it mean to silence the women? Like we said, shelo tiyena mitapchot umaspidot pen yargish hacholeh et trof da'ato. So we see that we're talking about people that are giving hespedim. We're not just saying you tell the mother who's crying, "Hey, shut up." Obviously that's not the case, but rather we're talking about the people that were yodeling or ululating, and as well banging on the pots and pans and maspidot. Umekarin lekatan et begadav. You tear for a katan his clothing. Bistam avelut kamairi. Now we're going back to a regular case of avelut. We're not talking about in the scenario of the choleh. Veleka choleh, when there's no choleh. You tear his clothing because of agmat nefesh, for grief. What does agmat nefesh? Who's agmat nefesh? What's the point of agmat nefesh? Says Rashi, kedei sheyibku haroim lefi she'af hakatan nikra. Because even the katan, look, Hazit, this poor kid, the little boy, he's tearing his clothes. What's the agmat nefesh? We're trying to arouse more agmat nefesh. Right? That the others around should cry more. Now, if you're reading this Gemara, the Gemara just says, Mishatkin et anashim, you silence the women, umikarin lekatan of the agmat nefesh. How did Rashi know that this case is not talking about where there's a choleh? All of this was going when there's a choleh. So let's go. Choleh shemet lomet, what do? You don't tell him. You don't tear in front of him. You silence the women. And you rip for the clothing for the little ones. How do you know that that's not talking about when there's a choleh? You know what the answer is? If the whole point of the katan is to add more grief, and we're doing all those other things to minimize the grief that the person should not realize, it is obviously not talking about the scenario of the case of choleh. So Rashi was able to intuit from the agmat nefesh that this is not the case of a choleh. Mekarin lekatam de agmat nefesh korin al chamiv. A person tears for his father-in-law and for his mother-in-law, not because he's obligated in the kavod and in the tearing and in the mourning for his in-laws, but rather out of kavod for his wife, he does so, to show honor to his wife.
Only in the presence of the wife.
Yes, we had a whole sugya. Remember?
They tear? Do we tear today? Would someone tear for like an in-law?
No.
But it says
Today we don't do that.
we don't do that.
No. Even in front of, we don't do. What are we relying on? There's another opinion. And in Avelut, we always follow the more lenient opinion. Exactly. Now, just one more piece over here. On the Kavod Ishto. Okay? Because I think that this is something which is a beautiful and very instructive idea. You see Rashi now, about 5 lines from the bottom. Bishelo hayasham. Excellent Jonah memory. When they're not there, bishat yitziat neshama. During the time yitziat neshama. Ti have bishat yitziat neshama. Afilu acher nami. So we're not talking about during the time of the person passing away. If the person was there during the time when they passed away, everyone has the chiyuv of kiryah. If the person is present during the time, then everyone does kiryah, he says. However, we're talking about over here, when they're not present b'shat kiryah, there's no chiyuv, but you do it b'nei kavod ishto for the honor of your wife. I just have to share this with you. Never in my life, they say, never have I ever. Never have I ever, / I did not think this would be on my bingo card, that anyone would ever think that kavod ishto means to tear kiryah on a niftar.
Why not?
Tearing kiryah, that's kavod ishto.
You're in mourning with the spouse.
That's kavod?
Yeah.
That's honor?
You're with. I am with you together.
That might be love. That's honor.
Yeah, I think it's the same
I'm
thing.
showing respect.
Yeah, I think it's kavod is respect, not honor.
Oh.
It's respect.
So we have the commandment of
Kibud
kibud avayim. What does the Gemara say? What does kavod mean? Not standing up. No, that's not kavod. Standing up, which you would think is honoring them, that's not kavod. No. What's kavod? Clapping? No, not clapping. What's kavod? Ezohi kavod Gemara Kiddushin. Get him a glass of water, bring him in, take him out, machilo, mashto, mechaseo, dress his clothing. Taking care of his needs is kavod. What is all the standing up business about? That is, ish imo ve'aviv tirau. There's an obligation of fear, also mistranslated, not just honor is mistranslated. Fear is actually, the correct word is, awe. So when a person is in awe of their father, they stand up. You don't call him by his first name. You don't sit in his seat. You don't stand where he converses with his peers. You don't agree with him or disagree with him. Machloket Rishonim. One opinion is you can't disagree with him. Everyone agrees on that. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Tur Machloket, don't even disagree with him. Sorry, not disagree. Don't even agree with him. Who are you to agree with him? Right? Machloket. So all of these things, that falls under awe. Now, here's my moment. So when we say kavod ishto, what does it mean? Because there's an obligation that we learn that a person, when they marry their wife, what's their obligation? He needs to. Do you remember this? We learned this line together a long time ago.
To honor her more than himself.
Oh, mechabdo. He needs to honor her
More than himself.
The language of the Gemara is not exactly that.
Like himself.
Language of the Gemara is not this.
Less than himself.
I'm not going to get into that piece. But he has an obligation to honor his wife.
Which Gemara is this?
Well, I'll give you the source after.
And to quote you, we're not, in the same way that we're not supposed to agree with our father, we shouldn't agree with our wife?
I'm not going to talk about agreeing with your wife because those are the laws of Pikuach Nefesh and Yareg V'al Yavor. So only for the big three, you argue with your wife. Other than that. Okay, now, what am I drawing here? Kavod means, what did we just say? You have kavod ishto. You're obligated. Like we said in the Gemara, person has obligation to honor his wife, right? I'm not giving you the exact halakha because it's a very dangerous halakha. In Rambam, how he says, whatever. Also, I'm scared that some women will be listening to this online. You don't have to enter into that without going through the sugya properly.
48 views of yesterday's class.
Ready for this? You have a chayuv, at least lechabdo. What does it mean to honor your wife? As we just said, what does the word honor mean when it comes to your parents? It means taking care of. Yes, but in what way? It means to take care of their needs. That's what it means. What we're learning in this Gemara then, caring for your wife's parents is kavod for your wife. It's taking care of her needs. That's what the word kavod means. Where do we learn that from? Kibud avaim. Ezui kavod. It means taking care of their needs. So what does kavod ishto mean? Substitute just ishto for avivimo. Taking care of their needs. And what does it say over here? Taking care of their needs means that when a person, a spouse, is suffering, a person has an obligation to do what they need to do to alleviate their suffering. What a powerful lesson that is. You have no obligation to tear, not your parents. But the wife is suffering. And she needs you to be sorry with her, to be sad with her, to put your arms around her. How many times do we fulfill the duties of honoring our wives by getting them a piece of jewelry, taking them out for their birthday, but in their sadness or in their sorrow or when they're suffering, we just hang them out to dry. And we say, this is a you problem. You sort it out. You deal with it. That's what we're learning over here. He has an obligation to tear his bigadim. As if, hopefully not, because you won't bring up all the dead stuff, but he has an obligation as if he's a mourner himself. Solid, huh? Okay, let's finish with this. We're over time. Last piece. The Amar of Papa. Huh? But this is meaty Gemara. This is meaty Gemara. The Amar of Papa says, Tana, be'evel rabti. We learned in evel rabti. Avel lo yaniach tinok betoch cheko. An avel is not allowed to hold a child on their lap. Because the child, as the child gurgles and laughs and smiles and burps and farts in your lap, everyone's like, he's so cute. And what does that happen? V'nimtza mitganeh ala beriyot. And now the person who's sitting there smiling in front of all the people in his moment of Shiva, mitganeh ala beriyot. Let's look at Rashi for a second. Rashi says, okay,
This doesn't change in the Shiva houses now.
Ave lo yaniach tinok b'yimei evlo becheko. Right? And during the times of Avelut in his lap, Rashi says. B'yimei evlo. Just to be clear, it doesn't mean that you can't hold the baby for a year. Doesn't mean you can't hold the baby for 30 days. Means, exactly, during the Shiva. Torah is not saying, put your kid in foster care. We'll see you next year. Right? It means b'yimei evlo. V'nimtza mitganeh ala beriyot. In the end, the person is laughing, and it's disrespectful to the met that someone's sitting there in the Shiva chairs, laughing, smiling, happy. Okay? Now, we already learned, we talked about the idea, a person's not allowed to learn Torah. Why? Because it brings him happiness. All the things that bring you happiness during Avelut, no go. Right? That's what we learned, correct? Okay. Now, this is the bit I want to end with. This halakha is still true today. It's a halakha mefureshet Shulchan Aruch. I have to just share with you that maybe the time to be the rabbi police is not if someone is sitting there in Shiva holding their baby. Woo! Yeah. Step away from the baby. You look too happy. I saw people once. I was at a Shiva house. The guy is smiling, and the guy says, "You're really not allowed to be happy. Go away. Go away." Yes, it's a halakha. But did someone come to you in your hour of pain and come to start giving you a mussar class? It's lakol zeman va'et. So here's a halakha. They're not allowed to hold the baby. You get this question. People are like, I'm sore. My mother-in-law, she's holding the baby. She just wants to hold the baby. She's so sad. She's crying the whole time. She just wants to hold the baby. Should I take the baby away? I'm thinking maybe we should leave the house. They're living in, maybe we should not stay in the house so that, she won't hold the baby. I was like, something? I think you can stay in the house. Shema Yisrael. Yes, that's the halakha. Correct. And for someone who's holding, I remember saying once, the person suffered terrible calamity. Someone comes in, his best friend, the guy gets up, he falls into his friend's arms, they're crying, holding each other. One of the other brothers says, "Now let the hug." He's prying them apart. I'm like, Shema Yisrael. Oh my gosh. Look, if you need to tell people off and give other people musar, let me make you a list of more appropriate things that you could spend your time on that will hurt people less not in their darkest hour. Things that you could start with before you come to this. Okay, we conclude on 26b4, only a few lines from where we started. Okay. Baruch Le'olam. Amen. Amen.